executed here in less than 2 months. As part of the event, we blew away the State Department of Public Health, their private well program. They came in to kick off a 9-month program to test 240 wells in northeastern Connecticut. They were going to take 9 months to do it. We did it in 1 day for them. We did 271 water collections for them in 1 day. And that represents a $52,000 investment in northeastern Connecticut. So you can see that we work with remarkable efficiency. Decisions here are made thoughtfully, they're made collaboratively, and results are achieved quickly. So of course, one of our concerns is, will the state be able to keep up with us? And that's fair. That's fair. But of course, we know that it is hard to keep up when you can't get there from here. We're a rural community. Our one of our number one concerns here, we lack public transportation. So I downloaded the map that you had of the proximity of the CSCU campuses, and I think everybody has kind of seen this. So with the exception of Three Rivers, QVCC is approximately 70 miles from all the other campuses. That's well over an hour. In the capital region alone, there are 5 community colleges with an average of about 18 miles, which is roughly about a 20-minute drive. Mm-hmm. Of course, we don't do traffic out here, so.
Except if you get behind a truck.
That's right.
Okay.
And we can guess what kind of truck you were behind.
I'm like, seriously?
So the board, we know that the Board of Regents, Diane mentioned it in her comments, they've struggled with the consolidation that took place in 2011, yet to realize any of the efficiencies that were envisioned then, and perhaps under your leadership that will change. So for us, though, there is no assurance that this attempt at consolidation will fare any better. So a recommendation is, if you must, considering an option like we always have to do here, start small. Start small, pilot a project in a geographically and demographically similar community, assess the data to determine whether you would advance or abandon the plan. In the I Hear You campaign that you developed, mm-hmm. you say our common humanity mm-hmm. should be respected and cherished. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge your humanity, because we're seeing Mark in a very one-dimensional setting. And he's coming in almost.
And Linda, just as I'm trying to keep Mark on track,
right.
I need to keep you on track too. We've
Christian
got all
knows
kinds
I
of
have a
questions.
microphone.
Yeah,
right.
Well, that's what I'm trying to.
I'm almost at the question.
All right, that's what we need.
But I do want to acknowledge, though we're seeing Mark in a very one-dimensional setting, okay? But as I have a family member with MS. Mark is an MS Man of the Year. The Ojakian Commons is a housing development to support people with multiple sclerosis. Mark is a MS Leukemia Man of the Year, the president of the board of Love Makes a Family. He exemplifies humanity, and we recognize that.
And again, let's get to the question.
All right, so.
No, she should just stop there.
No. Okay, so we cherish this college. We cherish it. We learn here. We grow into capable leaders here, and something remarkable happens here, Mark. We stay here. We stay here and give back consistently and generously. And every day we find new ways to make contributions to the betterment of the people who live here. So my question for you, you can wake up now, how will you preserve the efficiency and the rapid turnaround times of local decision making as we make it here? And who will sit on the numerous community coalitions, the working boards, the events that are necessary to sustain these strong partnerships that are the QVC system?
Thank you, Linda.
And Linda, thank you. I think the goal, now that she totally disarmed me with that, because MS is very near and dear to my heart, so the goal is to not affect that. That's the goal. And so we have to figure out how we get there together, okay, working together to get there. Some of the administrative functions I'm talking about across 17, because if you take a look at the whole map, there's 17 within the state of Connecticut. And I can't believe that we can't have a conversation about a better way to integrate our purchasing through 17 institutions, to take advantage of our bulk purchasing power to get a bigger bang for the buck. You know, I talk on the residential campuses when they want to throw tomatoes at me, is why can't we bid out one food service contract with different variations in the contract? And have one person bid on them instead of having 16. Charter Oak, I don't think, has their separate food service contract. So these are the kinds of conversations that we need to have. It was these conversations that should have happened in 2011, 2012, and were envisioned in 2011 when we put the legislation together and worked with all of the legislators to make sure that the quality was going to be intact, that the access was going to be intact, and that the local uniqueness and mission were going to be respected. That never happened. So if it happened, maybe I wouldn't be here today. But I think I was asked to take on this role because people knew there was a problem. Maybe not a problem here specifically, but a problem in having what you said. Look at all the institutions in Hartford. Is there a different way to work that? Probably. But, you know, do you close an urban campus? Probably not. Because just like, you know, students have transportation issues there, most of our students that go to Gateway or go to Housatonic or go to Capitol walk or take the bus. You know, they don't take Ubers, as was recently suggested to me that we should have our students take Ubers to solve. And Senator Flexer was there and heard that, so I'm not making it up. So I'm willing to work with anybody to get to that goal. So thank you for your question and your comments. And
Thank you. Next question.
almost making me cry.
Good morning, President Ojakian. Welcome to QVCC. I'm Elkin Espiti Eloisa. I'm the interim coordinator of the Willimantic Center. And I have a question that started as a student question.
Sure.
But I want to preface by saying that your plan to reorganize the system that you say is going to take a few years is happening right now in Willimantic. Mm-hmm. And here's the question. With the relocation of the Willimantic classes to Windham High School, how are 365 students supposed to enhance their lives through high-quality academic programming if they don't even have a library or a learning center or a permanent facility? The guiding principles of this strategy are not being properly applied to put students first. And that's my question.
So let me talk about that. So this isn't the first time I've heard that question. And what I've committed to was to making sure that we had an educational arm of this institution in the Willimantic area. But it's about how we deliver that. We can't afford the operating costs right now for a separate facility because it's draining, and it's draining resources which are already going to be cut $750,000 to $1.5 million. So we took a look at what we could do because I didn't want to not have access for the students in Willimantic to this education. We looked at what we did in Meriden, where we had an operating cost at a building of about $750,000 a year to operate the Meriden Center of Middlesex. And we worked with the local school district and with the legislative delegation and with the mayor's office to come up with a solution because I didn't want to close the center and not have somewhere for the students to go. And now the students are moving into Platt High School and they'll be offering the same courses and even additional courses because now there's lab space there for those students. So it's about choices, right? I would love, right, to have whoever owns the building to give it, to offer rent-free to us, right? And I don't know who it is, but
can I just differentiate with Middlesex in the Pratt arrangement? We're not going more classrooms, more accessibility, we're going less. So those two plans, even though they seem a little bit similar with the partnerships, are not working the same way. So that's
Well,
where
I
my
think what we're
question
trying to
comes
do,
from.
sir, to be perfectly honest, is to try to find a way to make it work so we don't have to just close it and have no access. So, like I said, life is about choices. This is about, continuing to provide the access, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that we can improve the access. But the operating costs of that building, just, if we have to continue to offer courses in that building with the operating costs, something's going to suffer here. And you already heard people talk about what's not being, or what people wearing 10 different hats here to provide the access to the students. I would rather consider renting a bus and having the students all come up here. It'd be cheaper. And then the students could come up here and take the course. I'm looking for solutions because we can't continue to operate that building at that cost. So if whoever owns the building is listening to the radio and wants to make a contribution to the community by offering it for no rent, I'm happy to entertain that conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
So pretty much every single one of my questions has already been asked. So I wanted to make
Introduce yourself.
My name's Sandra. I wanted to make a statement about the face-to-face comment and the 10 hats that people wear individually in this college. So I, as a student here, didn't have an education or anything like that before I came here. But once I came here, I became a student worker, a financial aid recipient, a scholarship recipient twice, a representative to the foundation through the SGA president, former, and I also was a committee planner for events such as Bogstock and other things. I've also tutored students. I've created a non-credit class that tutored elderly in computer courses. So needless to say, QVCC has touched upon my leadership in many, many ways. So with that being said, I would like all my students to stand up, if you could, please. Every student here. Thank you. Rise up. Jody, you're a student. And then I would like every faculty member who wears the 10 different hats to take a stand as well. Please. Faculty, staff, everybody. I can wholeheartedly say that if it were not for every single individual student here, the faculty and staff, that I wouldn't be the leader I am today. None of the other students would have what they have from QVCC without these amazing people. So when you talk about the implementation team leaders in your presentation, who's going to represent us that's from New England, from Northeastern Connecticut, that knows what QVCC is really about?
Well, each campus has been asked for representation that will be selected by the leaders. And when I have spoken to the student regent, Holly Palmer, who is serving on my steering committee, so the student advisory committee is represented as part of that body. I'm asking her to work with the student advisory committee to come up with names of students that want to participate in this endeavor as well. Recognizing that we're going to have to do some work over the summer because, we don't have the luxury right now of waiting and, starting in the fall, because every month that we don't have the process move forward is another month where our structural deficit is going to just continue to increase. So there will be student representation on these groups. We had asked previously on the other working groups, we asked through the SGA to have, the SAC to have representation, and we didn't get a lot of feedback from that effort. I think this effort, I think, is more public, and I think people will want to be able to participate. You know, I mean, part of the problem with students often have a lot of other things to do besides just going to school and being on committees. And many times, I see this gentleman at the meetings a lot, but a lot of times there's not a lot of students, even though they represent the campus, that are on, that go to the meetings. And so it's a challenge.
It sounds like you'll get plenty of interest here, though.
Absolutely,
All right,
absolutely. No,
and-
he's been
right.
great at representing this campus at the student
And,
advisory.
and with that, I want to move to the
You
next
have it.
question, please. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, President Ojakian, esteemed guests. My name is John Lewis. I'm the professor of chemistry here at QVCC, chair of the Department of Science, and former acting dean of academic affairs. And my question today is directly directed to the proposed cuts. Well, QVCC has been hitting its budget targets for the past 5 years, in spite of draconian funding cuts and mid-year rescissions sent down to us from Hartford. And yet we here at QVCC continue to provide superior service to our students in all areas, from advising to financial aid, the folks in the business office, maintenance, instruction, and yes, indeed, our administration, in spite of having a very lean staff and a very lean budget. So in considering the $28 million savings figure proposed in Strategy 2, what portion of that $28 million would affect QVCC directly, and how could that amount possibly come out of this institution after what you've learned today? Thank you.
So what I'm suggesting is that the $28 million is a savings target over 2 years. And how we get to that savings target is going to be determined by a planning process that looks at 12 of the colleges and how can we better manage them across the state the size of Connecticut. Now, what it's important to know is I don't cut budgets. So I just want to be clear, you know, I actually, you know, play the hand that I'm dealt. So when I get a block grant, and the governor's budget had one block grant originally, and then they kind of broke it out because universities were afraid I was going to give it to the colleges, and the colleges were afraid I was going to give it all to the universities. And Charter Oak, I don't know where they were on this. But so we'll get a block grant that will come from the legislature. That will be at least for the colleges, I'm trying to think, the whole cut is at least $38 million to $90 million. So a portion of that, because the 60% of the budget for community colleges comes from the General Assembly in the form of a budget. So I understand how lean this institution is. I also understand that there's many things at this institution that may be considered a model for how we implement the savings goals across the system. But what you need to recognize, I think, is that while you've been able to do a really good job with limited funds, those funds are about to get even more limited and more limited and more limited. And I looked at your budget numbers this morning because I like to be prepared. And you know, a $750,000 cut might not seem like a lot of money. I'm sorry, my back's bent to you. Might not seem like a lot of money for many institutions. It is for here. And that could go to up to $1.5 million. So you talk about being lean now. Where does that cut go? How are we going to take the deficit numbers we're going to have, $38 million as a system this year, $55 million next year, $75 million a year. I mean, the deficit just keeps growing. And the point of this exercise is to try to find a way to stop the deficit from growing across the system that we are a part of. That's what this is about.
So President Ojakian, recognizing that, has any thought been given to trying to reallocate some of those cuts, some of those savings to the larger institutions, the Easterns, the Centrals, the Southerns, because they have potentially the better ability to absorb those types of cuts as opposed to the tiniest of institutions such as Quinebaug Valley Community College. It looks like the community colleges are being disproportionately hit as opposed to those four larger institutions.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
So what flexibility do you have and what thoughts do you have to be able to reallocate that?
And if you were with me yesterday at Central, you would have thought that the world was ending because of the proposal to try to consolidate or integrate administrative functions around all 17. What I will say to you is we have to take a look at the percentage of funding that comes from the state and the financial position of the constituent units. So when you have a community college system that in many cases is disproportionately affecting student services at the expense of administration, then we need to look at what we do. I will also tell you another thing. 80% of all the costs in the system as a whole are people. 95% of those people are in collective bargaining units. The contracts, I respect collective bargaining. I've been a big proponent my whole life of collective bargaining. So we need to take a look at how we can do things differently in the places that are most financially vulnerable. And what I would say to you is that the block grant that I get from the legislature for the community colleges, I can't shift money between one place and another. So if we don't do something in the community college system, then what you are going to see is campuses closing. And I can't stress that enough because I can't move money. I don't have one block grant where I can move funding between one function and another. I get a block grant from for community colleges, and it's distributed according to a full-time equivalency formula. So I don't,
So in order to help you, are we to understand that we should be talking with our legislatures and the governor's office to try to attempt to shift the monies from one of the block grants to the other? In order to have a lesser impact at the community college level versus the four other institutions?
I'm not telling you what to do.
But it sounds like
Because
you're telling us our hands are tied.
I represent universities too. So, I think you need to advocate for what you think is in the best interest of your community.
I think the question is,
I
we're not
think-
asking you for
listen,
advice,
you
we're
have
looking for what is the
legislators,
process.
You have legislators and you have a governor, and ultimately you'll have hopefully, you'll have a process where the legislature and the governor comes together to negotiate a budget. Right. And, there's also, I would just point out, it's not only the budget cuts, but they take APS money, and there's also rescissions that happen during the year. So just because there's a $38 million proposed cut on the low end, we might get a budget, and they could say because the governor's office has the authority up to a certain percentage to have rescissions. And they could say, we're going to cut your budget mid-year, a quarter of the way through, depending on what the projected deficit is, by up to 5%. And there goes that money.
Right, thank you.
Just
Quick
one
follow-up.
comment. One quick comment. We have legislators in the room. Perhaps the legislators who are here and the Board of Regents together could advocate making one complete block grant for all of the institutions under the Board of Regents to allow more flexibility in going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hello, President Ojakian. I'm Andy Morrison. I'm an outreach specialist for the manufacturing program here at QVCC, as well as at Three Rivers Community College. My question is based on the fact that in preparing for today, many of us watched some of the videos from the other town halls. We read up as much as we could. And as has been evident today as well, your Students First proposal, many of us have often referred to it as a plan, and you've been quick and consistent in recognizing the fact that it's not a plan but a strategy. And as we've sought details as to how this strategy would impact our school and community, some of that has been deferred to the work that the implementation teams will be doing. And I
I
think
changed the name, by the way, to planning teams at the suggestion of a student.
planning teams, okay,
Planning teams.
who will be presenting to a timeline to the Board of Regents in June? Okay.
Yes.
So in seeking details and specifics and not necessarily finding them to the level that we'd like, I think that explains a lot of the anxiety and concern that people are feeling. And in preparing for today, we did read the article you did with the New Britain Herald's editorial board just a few days ago on Monday night, in which you said, quote, "In my model," so the word model, "in year 3, we get to the point where our revenue exceeds our expenses." So we were hoping to get some clarification as to the model you're referring. Is that the strategy? And if it is a model based on the strategy and not a plan, how can it accurately project 3 years into the future?
Sure, absolutely. Because I think, and thank you for the question, because I think what you have to do, even with a strategy and a financial savings target, is you look and you project what if you achieve those targets, right? So that's still, we may not achieve those targets. We may get down the road and say, can't achieve the targets. But if you don't set a goal, you have nothing to try to work toward. But when you look at the model, and we get those savings in the first 2 years, you will see in year 3, based on, all things being equal, based on a funding pattern we're expecting, which could get better or worse, based on, quite honestly, in the first 2 years, another discussion about a modest tuition increase. I mean, I'm going to be honest, we cannot not have that conversation if things continue at the state level to deteriorate. And based on what may or may not happen with collective bargaining, right? Because I assume that if there is an agreement, that there will be at some point wage increases. So I have to factor that into the model as well. Because what I'm trying to do is to come to a point where the structural deficit evens out, and for once we'll have more resources than we have expenses. Now, the model may not come to pass, but I felt it was responsible to set a target and set out strategies as opposed to just doing nothing. And quite honestly, I'll be very honest, because people have said to me, you should close this one or that one or this one or that one. It would be easier to close one institution than to try to engage in this exercise, right? I mean, it would be, seriously, I mean, sure, there would be legislators in whatever district it is, although some legislators have said, you can close mine. It'd be much easier to do that if I really wanted to just capture the savings and move on. But what does that do to the students in that location? Just as much as you're an outreach person and do, I'm sure, a great job, and you have 2 schools you're working with, what would happen? And I'm not proposing this, but as an example, what if this institution closed? Where would the students go? What if an institution in Northwestern Connecticut, in Winstead, closed? Where would the students go? So while it might have been easier to take that approach, I didn't think it was responsible.
Thank you. Next question,
Thank you.
please.
Yep.
How you doing, sir? My name is Joe Ojakian. I'm a student here, and You mentioned this a couple of times, but it seems like the budget cut is inevitable. Giving that concession, what do you think? Well, a college or a community college is, in my belief, is first and foremost a service. People go to a community college to receive a service. They receive, knowledge, whether that be a degree, being part of a community or something like that. Since the cuts are inevitable, how can we go about it without, hitting any large arteries while still maintaining efficiency and, specialization? My own suggestion would maybe be like examine, like the businesses around in the area and adapt to, like the market demands perhaps. Just a thought.
That's a very good suggestion, and I think colleges are very good at doing that, of understanding what the needs are in the local community for business and for the workforce, and adapting their process and curriculum accordingly. I think what we need to do, though, is to figure out how we, as a system, adapt to the budget cuts that are coming down the road so that we don't continue to reduce those services that are available to students. I was on a campus the other day where they have no support at the institution for veterans. They have a great Oasis Center, but they have no money. How is that helping our veterans, right? So, when you divide your workload between, not here, but another institution, between financial aid and veterans benefits, what's getting lost? So I'm trying to work with the businesses at even a bigger level to say you need to be part of the solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to have a time for a couple more questions, though, but I want to let everybody know, both here and with the listening audience, that if you have questions and would like to send them to President Ojakian, his email address is cscu-president@ct.edu. cscu-president@ct.edu. And we thank you for providing that for us so that those that want to follow up can do that. Next question, please.
Good morning, sir. My name is Mary Arsenal, and I'm a student at the Willimantic Satellite Office. I've returned to school after many years of an absence. You have stated publicly that QVCC is one of a couple of community colleges which has been running in the black for several years. You've also stated QVCC serves a region of the state where there is no overlap with other community colleges. As you know, the Willimantic Center serves the densest part of the community. Windham County has a high rate of disadvantaged students. Besides the fact that the college has exercised a financially sound system, let me tell you a few good things about the Willimantic Center. 95% of the students who were enrolled at the census date were still enrolled as of last Thursday, April 20th. That is a 94% of the FTE in Willimantic. In addition, Introduction to Manufacturing is in its second class this semester, and there were plans for a non-credit CNA and personal training class. My question to you, sir, is how can you justify the plan to downsize the Willimantic Center to only the fundamental classes when your Student First initiative claims that students will not feel an impact in the services? Also, where is the advising going to come from? The tutoring, library, financial aid? Students in Willimantic and QVCC are succeeding because these services, which presently are limited with the new plan, will severely be cut. The impact of reduced services has been felt by the college population based in Willimantic for several years now. This seems disproportional and will have a direct impact on the enrollment of the college as a whole.
Thank you.
So thank you for that question. So I think what we're attempting, first of all, I don't think I've ever said that QVCC is operating in they're operating in a good position.
The president, when she addressed us, said that the Danielson campus was in the black, and I
Yeah,
believe
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I got on one of your
Okay,
emails.
I was mixing colors, sorry.
Yeah, black is
Red,
good.
black. I don't even know
Their
what campus I'm at
property
right now.
here,
No, but so you're in the black, and I know that we don't know what this year is going to look like, but the black has gotten grayer You're reaching your budget targets, but where there used to be healthy, last year it's going down, right? And so what are the choices, right? The choices do we try to find a way to address the needs of the students in Willimantic, and maybe we need to, figure out how we address your concerns at the same time being able to offer those courses in Willimantic, or do we not have those courses at all? There's a fundamental, I think, budgetary lesson that I think I always try to learn, as somebody that doesn't balance their own checkbook. But the institution only has so much money. And so we have to examine costs and revenue. And in order to keep the budget balanced, we need to be very cognizant of how the money is spent. Now, it's very expensive to have that building and the operating costs where it is currently located. And I've made, a plea on the radio happy to talk to whoever owns that building to say, if you want to be part of the solution in your community, let's talk about maybe offering that building as part of a philanthropic gesture. I don't know.
Now, you've mentioned closing the center a couple of times that I've heard that's a possibility instead
Closing the building.
Correct.
Correct.
So you're definitely stating that there will be a relocation.
I don't know how we do it otherwise unless somebody steps up to the plate and offers the operating money to keep that building going. So I think we together need to be creative in a time of diminishing resources of how we provide that service. I made a promise to Senator Flexer and Representative Johnson when they came to the board meeting at Eastern that I would continue to provide educational courses in Willimantic. We're just trying to find out the best way to do that to be able to save it.
Because I want President Emeritus Bob Miller to be able to close, I'd like to go to one more quick question, and then thank you very much.
I also have letters from him from Willimantic students that could not be here.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
One last question, and then we'll go to President Miller.
Good morning, President Ojakian. My name is Blanca Viveros. I am one of the ESL students from Willimantic Center. For me, it's very important to continue studying English. I truly want to have a good understanding when I speak with other people. I live in this country and I want to serve the community, taking care and or assisting with older people. For me to be able to do this, I need to speak the language and continue studying to become a nurse. How can I be able to continue studying English? For me, it's very important to continue in Willimantic because I have two little children and they need me. I hope you think about all the students of Willimantic before making this big decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
President Miller.
So we had the opener, now we have the closer. Tag team.
Two of our best assets.
Oh, absolutely. No, I couldn't think more highly of these two individuals.
Thank you, Christian. President Ojakian, we thank you for visiting Quinebaug Valley Community College. I would hope that among your takeaways from this town meeting is that no community college in Connecticut or elsewhere is more strongly supported, more beloved by faculty, staff, and students and members of the community. Indeed, the very existence of this college is due to the efforts of the community leaders from each of the towns in our service areas who came together to work towards its establishment. And just as the state faces a serious financial situation now, the same was true in 1971. And yet Thomas Meskel, who was known as the austere governor, was seeking the office of governor, and he had only two new initiatives in his platform, and one was for the establishment of Quinebaug Valley Community College. It was 45 years ago this month that I was inaugurated as the college's first president. More than an inauguration, the occasion was as well a celebration of its founding. Among the speakers was former Governor John Dempsey, a Putnam native, who noted that, quote, "The community leaders were never a pressure group. They merely did their homework and proved to the legislative leaders of the state the need for a community college for northeastern Connecticut," end of quote. The principal speaker that day was Danielson's own Dr. Sidney Marland, the U.S. Commissioner of Education. He noted that the occasion marked, quote, "the formal inauguration of an educational enterprise of great promise," end of quote. He said the community college system stands at the very center of the career education concept. Another speaker, Lieutenant Governor T. Clark Hull, called community colleges, quote, "the people's universities," and noted the great success of the state's community colleges and pledged, quote, "full administrative support for the continued progression of Quinebaug Valley Community College into one of the state's great institutions of higher education," end of quote. And indeed, there is ample evidence that this has happened. Its culture and its programs reflect the needs of the communities it serves. And yes, each of the 12 colleges has a unique culture. President Emeritus Williams has served at this and 2 other community colleges. I have served here and at 4 of the other colleges. No 2 are the same. Each has developed according to the needs of and with input from its communities. This is the community college mission. And I submit that this would not have happened with a central administration in Hartford with 12 branch campuses or locations. The planning process adopted by the Board of Regents has been named Students First. Well, at Quinebaug Valley Community College, Students First has been our mantra since the first students began their studies in 1971. In preparing for my remarks today, I came across a letter from a former student that reflects this focus and the determination of our students. She said, quote, "When I attended Quinebaug Valley Community College, I was a single parent living on half of a shoestring, juggling food stamps, welfare checks, and grant money. My goal was to earn an associate's degree and transfer to a 4-year college for a bachelor's degree, eventually earning a PhD, which he did. Quinebaug Valley Community College groomed me for the next college in my life. Everyone, which included the president, instructors, academic and financial counselors, deans of the college and staff, taught, pushed, prodded, and encouraged me. I was a 36-year-old with 2 small sons who had dreamed of a college education all her life. I went on to earn a bachelor's degree from Brown University. One of my classmates earned her PhD from Brown," end of quote. And incidentally, that student also struggled financially, but went on to become president of a prestigious private college and is now executive director of the American Association of Universities and Colleges, an alumna of this college. Would these students and hundreds of others have had the same individual attention with a reduced staff here and centralized services in Hartford? And speaking of financial struggles, hundreds of students over the years have been assisted by grants from the Quinebaug Valley Community College Foundation, which, through the great generosity of local industry, businesses, and individuals, has become the 2nd largest foundation among the 12 colleges in one of the most economically deprived areas of the state. This year, the foundation, as has been mentioned, will distribute $210,000. No federal student loans have been processed at this college since 2010. Would our foundation continue to be this successful if administered from Hartford? Would donors be as inclined to send checks to a faceless office in Hartford? I will conclude my remarks with some observations about the assertion that the community colleges are, quote, top-heavy with staff. Not true. Every staff member at this college and at the other colleges of which I have personal knowledge have multiple areas of responsibility. Most work directly with students. And the institutions need to be headed by individuals who have the title of president. No other designation has the same cachet. The individuals who have served and are serving as presidents have reached pinnacles in their careers. Their work week is typically one of 50 to 60 hours. They are called upon to serve on boards of organizations within and outside of the college's service regions. They are the nexus between the community leaders and the college. So, President Ojakian, again, we thank you for visiting our college. We implore you to seek options for closing the budget gap other than one that would result in consolidation and enormous damage to the mission of these colleges. The faculty, staff, students, members of the community, and certainly President Drummer stand ready to assist in devising any plan that will prevent taking community out of the community colleges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Emeritus Miller, for so eloquently providing the message that needs to be heard. I'd like to thank President Ojakian for coming today to hear our questions, our concerns, and hopefully you will take the information back that we have provided you to understand that at least at this institution we cannot afford, and the students cannot afford, the perhaps draconian cuts that may be coming. There has to be another way. We are willing to work with you to do that, but we hope you take that message back. There has to be another way. Thank you all. I'd like to also thank the staff at QVCC for setting this up today, and thanks you all for coming.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
Notice, I don't quibble with the 28 million. You got a huge problem. I'm just saying, don't put it all, take it all. So maybe a single block grant is the answer.
And maybe that's what we